Well, today I have a little exercise for you. When we see a group of chickens, what do we call them? Okay. When we see a bunch of cows in a group, what do we call them? Herd. Lions?
Pride.
Pride. Crows? A murder of crows. Somebody said they could do that. Oh, man. I didn't know that. It's pretty weird we call it a murder of crows, right? I don't know what that's about. What about doves? An exaltation. An exaltation of doves. Remember that. You can really, you're very smart when you're with somebody. Doves, right? And look, it's an exaltation of doves. Right? Owls. A parliament of owls. Parliament of owls. Now, the thing that I learned is that all these words for the groupings came from Britain during the age when they were looking at different types of animals and putting them in genus and species and that kind of thing. Now, what do you think a group of baboons together are called? A congress. And you know what a bunch of alligators together are? You ever seen those alligators? And you ever been on like an alligator farm before? They all lay on top of each other and bite each other's tails off and all that. You know what they're called? A congregation. It's true. Absolutely true. Look it up. It's there. Isn't it funny how we have these words for things? I got to give you a disclaimer on the Congress thing. They're not really sure about that. They're not really sure about that. But it makes sense, right? You get the idea. So today's Transfiguration Sunday, and the question that we have before us is, why does Jesus shine so brightly? He's a star. He stands out in human history. And I want to ask you to dwell on that question today. Why does Jesus shine so brightly? And we'll explore that a little bit. Because, as we said in the children's message, he's bright. He shows us the way. The world is illumined when we begin to live in the same spirit that he lived in. In the days of Jesus, he shined brightly for these disciples because, first of all, he was not Caesar. He was not Herod. He was not an uptight temple priest. He wasn't trying to sell them anything. He was fully human. He lived in God's presence. He didn't live in the past. He talked to Elijah and Moses. He didn't live in the past. He talked about working for the future. He didn't call people to be part of an institution and sign their names in a book. He called them to look inside their hearts. And he isn't concerned about the people in places of power. He's wise enough to look for the people who are in need. I heard a neat story on the radio this last week. Does anybody know what kind of dog that is? We're in animals. This is Animal Sunday. Blessing to the Animal Sunday. Ah, there you go. Is that how you pronounce it? Oh boy. Along with bridle, I would have pronounced that one wrong. I wouldn't have had that. Bichon Frise is what I would call it. You know these dogs. They're pretty small, right? I always listen to the radio program Mike and Mike in the morning. They're kind of sports. Greenberg and Golick. Well, about both lives in Medina. And they just got a puppy, Bichon Frise. And they said that right away it was trained. It would spend the whole night, didn't have to go to the bathroom. In the morning, every morning, like clockwork, bang, they would go to their back door. They would let their... There you go. Out the back door. I knew I wouldn't be able to pronounce that. And onto the deck, and he would go out, do his business, come back in, right? So one morning he gets up, he's standing at the kitchen window, he's fixing his coffee, he looks out, and on the fence that's around their backyard to keep the dog in is a great, big, huge hawk. You guys drive around, you see these big hawks on the wire. Holy smoke. So for a while, he's admiring this hawk, right? And he says, wow, isn't that a beautiful creature? And look how big it is. And then, bang, it hits him. That hawk knows what time of day I let that little puppy out. Dead. And that puppy's just there as like a little snack in the morning for this hawk. And so he's on the radio and he says to the audience, he said, this couldn't be, could it? And all these people are calling in, oh yeah, you got to watch little animals and puppies and things, because hawks, they're pretty big. You've seen them. And so I'm thinking, what is it about our passage today that makes Jesus shine so brightly? And it's because he was the good shepherd. It's because he keeps us safe, and the world is a dangerous place. The network of the world, just in the way it is a pretty dangerous place. It was a dangerous place for the disciples. And in Jesus, they found a way not to be afraid, eventually. He's the good shepherd. It's the most popular image of Jesus. Jesus shines brightly because he shows us the way in a dangerous world. All I do is listen to the radio and watch TV. And how many of you remember that game? The Newlywed Game. You guys like that game? Whenever you're starting something new, it's always scary. And you're always not quite sure you know what you're doing. You know how that is? And so these four couples, I just snagged a picture of the Newlywed Game. There were four couples. And it was kind of a Valentine's special Newlywed Game. And they went through a whole series of questions, and one couple did pretty well. Most of them did terribly. About what family member it was that they couldn't stand, about what their favorite meal was, their favorite place, and the men didn't know what their wives' favorite place, their family member, that kind of thing. But they asked the question. I thought this was amazing. They said, what will you say your wife is afraid of? And all four of those guys, bang, right away. They knew what their wife was afraid of. Spiders, death, not being able to breathe, and snakes. They gave it four of those guys. Right away they had that answer. So you know how that show is. They bring the women on. Right away. They said, oh, he's going to say this. As newlyweds, they talked about the thing that they were most afraid of. Isn't that interesting about intimacy? Is that the thing that we know most is that we want someone to listen to our stories. We want people to know our insecurities. And the one thing they knew was that. In Warriors Journey Home, we have another meeting tonight. It's a place where we gather veterans and also sometimes family members of veterans. We have some people who missed the draft in the 60s, and they think about some of their friends that didn't come back, and they're beginning to process those things. And we get together in a circle on Sunday evenings, and it's an open circle. And our motto is listen, speak, and heal. Isn't that important in marriage too? To know when to listen, to know when to speak, and to find healing. Isn't that the way it is with our relationship with Jesus? That we have to know when to listen, when to speak, and to find healing. Now, Peter's afraid. Peter's afraid. I want you to think today what you would grab off that list, because your spouse already knows it. What are you afraid of? Where's that list? Jesus knows your story. We have all these hymns that say, especially Just a Closer Walk with Thee, you notice? That had those same themes in it, didn't it? Those themes of Jesus watching over us. Take it to the Lord in prayer. Someone knows me. Someone watches over me. Someone cares about me. Wow. Someone cares about me. Can you say that? Jesus loves me. He was bright. He was bright, and he changed the world. In fact, he was transfigured in a way that lifted him above all other people that have ever lived. Listen, speak, and heal. Everybody needs a safe place where they can tell their story and share their fears. And the disciples found that in Jesus. And also, I wanted to show you this is what Peter said about the experience in the letter of 1 Peter. With our own eyes, we saw his true greatness. True greatness isn't found in associating with Herod and Caesar. True greatness is about reaching down to the people who are in the leper colonies, for those people who've been outcast, displaced by society. And so, what do they say? What do the disciples say when they're on that mountain? They say, let's build for you 3 booths. 3 booths. And what this has to do with is creating a memorial on this mountain, something where they can worship and come back to and later on sell souvenirs from, probably. And I want to tell you about something really weird that happened when I was in Illinois. There was a big debate about state funds. I know that's not a big debate in Ohio, but it was a big debate in Illinois about state funding for national parks and monuments. And I lived in Springfield, Illinois. 30 miles north of us was a town called Lincoln. And it was founded in the 1850s, and they had asked Abraham Lincoln to come and to perform a ceremony whereby he would christen the town and name it after himself. And I'm trying to think what it was that he said at that time when he did that. He said something like, it's not a good idea because anything that's ever been baptized with the name Lincoln has never turned out very good. Something like that. So when he was there, he kind of made light of it. He took a wagon full of watermelons, and he squeezed some watermelon juice out, and he poured it on the ground, and he says, I hereby christen this Lincoln, Illinois. That's the story. It's a true story. Actually, you can look it up. And in 2004, I think it was, during the time I was there, the people of Lincoln wanted to build a 300-foot-tall Abraham Lincoln pouring juice down in the town square. Now, why would you do that? That was a question the governor asked at the time. When they asked for state funding, I don't understand. Would Abraham Lincoln want a statue, or would he want us to practice civil rights and justice in the world? How is it that we probably could have honored Lincoln's memory and kept him alive? Through a statue or through the things that we do? This is what actually showed up. They toned it down a little bit. It's a 3-foot metal watermelon that was painted. No kidding. That's in Lincoln, Illinois. Truth is stranger than fiction. There's no way I could have made something like that up. No way. But what I want to say is that sometimes we get distracted in religion. Sometimes we get distracted in the church. And we think that this right here is a church. We think those stained glass windows, that's a church. You go by, you see the bricks on the outside. That's the church. Thank God the church is there. That's how Jesus is saying in this passage. Peter, James, and John, they were the church. They are the things that matter. Not the temple that you build. Not the monument, not the thing that's named there so that you remember the name. It's the thing that you do. It's the people that you reach out to. Now, we all know that there are a lot of clouds in this life. And any picture that you've ever seen of the Transfiguration has a lot of clouds in it. Man, I'll tell you, one time I was in Marianne Bailey's, Maine. I was in, Arcadia in Bar Harbor. And I was out on that little rock precipice, you know, where you look out. And man, all of a sudden, all these clouds came in from the ocean. Has that ever happened there? I can hardly see, you know. My two fears are heights and water. And that's